Hey, it's Katie from AI After Hours. And if you're new to this show, this is your space where I talk about personal branding, how to build one in a way that feels natural and authentic, and how to use AI to amplify your voice, not replace your voice. Now, today's episode, I'm going to be sharing one prompt that will help you audit your content and will help you understand whether you're talking to a real person or a stock photo. But before I get into the prompt, I want to share a story with you about my friend Kelly. Now, Kelly Carr is a dear friend of mine. We've done some branding work together. And a couple months ago, she was getting ready to present to her local BNI group. And so, if any of you have done BNI or any sort of networking where you have to get up and kind of give your 60-second elevator pitch, who are you, what do you do, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, she's been a loan officer for more than 20 years, so she is not new to this industry, and she has given her elevator pitch a hand of times. But she was thinking about it. She goes, okay, well, what do I do? I help people achieve wealth through homeownership. Okay, well, so does the thousands of other loan officers in the country. So it's not exactly magnetic or memorable. So she really sat with her story and really got to the deeper layers of why do I believe what I believe and why am I doing this? Now, here's the thing. If you've been in my ecosystem, following my content for any amount of time, you'll know that I always push foundation first. A lot of people are going to tell you more content, more this, more that. Great, that is true in its appropriate sequence. But if you don't have your foundation in place, you don't have your messaging, your positioning, your audience, those kinds of things, then your content is just exactly that. It's more noise. So going back to Kelly, she really unpacked her layers. Now, she realized that her story started when she was 14. Her dad had passed away and she had access to a trust fund. Thankfully, he had done his, due diligence as a parent, set all of that up. So when she turned 18 and was heading off to college, instead of living in the dorms, she bought a condo near the university. And that, as you know, is powerful because now she's not renting. Now, fast forward to when she graduated college, she learned that a family member had misplaced the funds in her trust fund account and it was gone, permanently gone. Now, you can imagine that is devastating on so many levels. But here's the thing that Kelly came back to. And she says, at least I had the condo on Capitol Hill. So when everything else was taken from her, she still owned a piece of property or an asset that then helped her as she got married. She took that condo into her marriage. She was able to sell it, buy her first starter home. And you know the sequence of home ownership going up that ladder. Now, that's her story. So she's not just speaking to the generic world of anybody that has a pulse, anybody that might want to buy a home. No, she's speaking to a very specific audience of first-time home buyers. She's speaking now to, people that are in their 20s, maybe 30s that are terrified to buy a home and unsure of the outcome. She's speaking to parents that are sending their kids off to college and maybe rather than sending them to the dorms, it's, considering buying a condo. Again, now she's actually speaking to a real persona, a real person on the other side of the screen, not just a stock avatar. Why is this important? Because more of the wrong content doesn't make you better. It just makes you tired. When you can really understand who you're talking to, then your content is going to be much more impactful. And the person you are most powerfully positioned to help serve is a past version of yourself. We speak the most authentic and pure out of our own lived experience. Okay. So for example, if we were to unpack part of my origin story, professionally, I spent over 6 years working for a corporate company where I helped top producers develop their personal brand. What does that tell you in layman's terms? I hid behind a camera. I hid behind my own story. I ignored my own thought leadership, my own perceptions and truths, and I helped other people build theirs. Now, professionally, that's the role that I was, hired for, and so that's what I did. However, when I hit burnout, which I eventually did, and I quit my job, I had no personal brand to fall back on, and I needed to build a business with no recognition. Okay. So that is the power of your personal brand, is the power of knowing your story. Now, for me, who am I most powerfully positioned to help? What gets me super excited to keep showing up on camera? I want to help the people that feel hidden. I want to help the people that feel lost in their voice, that feel terrified to hit the red record button. I want to help the people that don't feel like they have anything worth saying because they're boring and unoriginal. The truth is, you do have something to say. You are worthy of hearing and sharing your story. And I know that because I've walked through this journey myself, and now that gets me excited to in turn help others. Okay, so now let's get into the prompt. I promise it's going to be pasted in these show notes below. So I'm not going to read the entire post or the entire prompt word for word because that's a little bit boring, but I'm going to break down the premise of this prompt and what it's going to help you accomplish. Okay, the first thing, you want to unpack your origin story. Now, if you've worked with me one-to-one or attended any of my workshops, you may have already done this. Your origin story, in short, is who are you? How did you get to where you are? And what are the things that make you most likely able to help the person that you're wanting to connect with? So a lot of times we have our personal origin story. You can have, your personal origin story that bleeds into your professional origin story, as I just shared a little bit about. So what this prompt is going to do is first it's going to ask you to brain dump. Now, as you're brain dumping your origin story, do not worry about having your polished, this is not the published version of your origin story. This is just your raw thoughts. Those are best because it provides the most amount of context for the prompt. So do not worry about, did I say this right? Am I grammatically correct? No, just type fast. Or what I like to do is voice text because we tend to talk a lot more natural than how we think and type. So whether you have Whisper Flow or some other app that allows you to voice text if you can. But the premise is you want to voice dump your origin story. Okay. So how did you get into this role? What do what led you to this? What were you doing before that? All of those things. Don't put limits on yourself, just as much as context as you want to give, do that. Now, the second thing that you want to do after you voice dump your origin story, you're going to want to pull up the social media platforms that you're most active on. Maybe that's Instagram, maybe that's LinkedIn, maybe that's email. Whatever that is for you, go pull 3 posts that you wrote that feel like they were the most genuine speaking to somebody. Now, don't just go click on the one that had the most likes or the most shares or whatever. Find the 3 that were like, I put some time and thought into that and I posted them. Okay. Then the prompt is going to ask you to copy and paste whether it was the caption or the email, whatever that piece of content was, go post that. Now, if it's a carousel, you can literally screen grab. There's a couple ways around that as well. Okay, what this prompt is going to do is it's going to take your origin story and then it's going to take the 3 pieces of content that you put out there and it's going to analyze your published content against your origin story. And it's going to tell you whether or not you were speaking to a real person on the other side of the screen. What I mean is this: when we create content that says, I help first-time home buyers, or I help veterans, or whatever, get into a home, give me a call, right? You're not really speaking to anyone. You're speaking to a super generic, as I like to say, stock photo. Okay. The goal of the content is that your content should feel so specific, like you're literally talking to the other person on the other side of the screen. Now, there's mechanics on, what makes a post really good and what makes it perform better. Not getting into that today. The core of what we're getting at is, are you clearly identifying your personas, the people that you want to speak to? So this single prompt is going to help you just identify that piece based off of your origin story and your past prompts. Now, once you work through that prompt and you get the feedback that you need, then depending on what your answer is, I would work through that in more depth. So if the answer is like, nope, this is super generic, then go into that same chat session and say, okay, help me identify my ideal persona and work on building out an ideal persona avatar. Or some people like to call it your ideal viewing avatar, the person that's going to be viewing your content. Once you have that built out, put it into a document, throw that into any of your AI projects. So if you're in Claude, put it in your project. If you're in ChatGPT or Gemini as well. Now, when you create future content, you can reference that avatar, that persona to help you make better content. All right, that's all I have for you on today's episode. I'll see you next week for the next show.